Another Republican denounces the Colorado GOP's anti-gay hate.
Frankly, it's not me that's changed, it's the Republican Party.
An intersection that always floods in Denver. Instead of an expensive fix, the city has a cheaper idea. It's hard to get around without a car in one neighborhood of Denver. How about an e-bike library? A World War II veteran who landed in Normandy in the weeks after D-Day reflects on his role in the invasion and changing world history.
We were going to put ashore as many men on shore as they had on the ground.
And how Colorado learned of D-Day. Tonight on Next. The Colorado Republican Party's blatant anti-gay bigotry is starting to have some consequences. This week, the Colorado GOP told supporters that God hates pride and echoed a vile slur. Today, a Republican elected in Aurora, one of the GOP's few bright spots in recent elections, says he is done with the party. Aurora City Councilman Curtis Gardner says the homophobic comments from the state party were the last straw. He's changing his party affiliation to unaffiliated. Gardner says the anti-gay attacks during Pride Month capped off a series of what he called disappointing decisions by the Colorado GOP and Chairman Dave Williams. In a mass email this week, the GOP attacked so-called godless groomers and called on people to burn all pride flags. Now, municipal elections are nonpartisan, but Gardner's part of a conservative majority on Aurora City Council. It's one of the few places in Colorado where Republicans have recently made gains.
It's reflective of me. If I'm part of that organization, it's reflective in some ways. I'm complicit in that. And so, it's really a soul-searching moment to say, am I okay with this? Is this the behavior that I want to model for my kids? And am I okay being part of an organization that acts like this? And upon reflection, the answer is no.
Earlier this week, the Republican candidate for Congress in the 1st Congressional District in Denver, Valdemar Archuleta, came on Next to say that he is renouncing the party's endorsement because of its bigotry. The signing of Colorado's annual elections bill usually isn't that noteworthy because it tends to just make tweaks here and there to keep up with election technology and security. Well, not this year. Governor Polis did sign that bill today, but issued a warning to fellow Democrats who used the bill to head off the will of voters who might choose to overhaul elections through a ballot measure in November. The maneuver by Democrats in the legislature is meant to slow down a proposed ballot initiative from former DaVita CEO Kent Thiry. If passed, it would abolish the party primary system and implement ranked choice voting by 2026. Democrats put in an amendment to put that off indefinitely until several municipalities across the state independently decided that they would switch to ranked choice voting. The governor does not have a line item veto, so he would have had to toss out the entire bill if he wanted to scrap that section. Instead, he signed it, but put out a statement saying that the state will abide by whatever voters decide in November. If voters approve a switch to open primaries and ranked choice voting, the governor says the state will make that switch by 2028 at the latest. So I can tell you the intersections that'll flood in Denver the next time it pours rain. You could probably tell us that, and the city knows them too. Like 38th near I-25. People in cars have been trapped there by flooding in the past. Now, the city could fix it. That'd be crazy expensive. But our Evan Krugel shows us what they're going to try instead.
There are certain places you really don't want to be when the skies open up in Denver. Places like 38th Avenue near I-25, where heavy rain can turn a commute into a car wash.
This definitely is a flood-prone area right here. What we have is a low spot that tends to flood when we get larger storm events.
Nancy Kuhn says the old pipes under this bridge simply aren't big enough to handle lots of rain, and running new pipes under the interstate to the South Platte River would cost taxpayers big money.
Not a cheap fix. It's been a couple years since we estimated the cost, but today would not be a stretch to say it could cost upward of $100 million to address this location.
Instead, the city is turning to signs, lots and lots of signs, warning people you could end up like this guy if you try to drive through floodwaters.
If you get a foot of water in there, cars can float.
And to keep those cars out, they're adding some new technology too.
We're also testing a sensor system. So this is a system that will alert us when water's starting to collect let us know that we probably want to drive over here, take a look, and see if we need to close it to cars.
It's the first time Denver's tried something like this, but Nancy says they could expand it to other problem flood spots if it works out this summer.
So we're testing it out, and really we haven't had a big storm yet that sensor has gone off. So we'll know more as, kind of maybe the season progresses if we get a big storm, and we can see how it works and then figure out if we need to adjust it, and do we like it? Do we want to expand our use of it?
So here's how that technology works. If the water levels hit that sensor, those lights on those signs you saw, those will start to flash. The city says at that point, they'll then come out and make the decision on whether the road needs to be shut down or whether it's safe to keep it open. Kyle?
I feel like this is the kind of thing that gets a lot of attention right after it happens, right? Because it's terrifying. You're like, people could lose their lives right there tonight, and then attention goes on to something else and we kind of forget about it.
Definitely the case in this particular spot. We see this every year, though, right? Mm-hmm. So I think after a certain amount of time, the city said, okay, we need to do something here before something really tragic happens at that spot.
Evan Krugel, thank you.
You bet.
Temporary win for the nonprofits running needle exchange programs down in Pueblo. Judge says that they can keep operating while they sue Pueblo City Council for shutting them down. Today, a judge decided that an immediate closure of those programs could really hurt the people who rely on the sites for clean needles, harm reduction services, STI testing, and behavioral health resources. Pueblo City Council blames those programs for all the needles being discarded around town. The ACLU is in on a lawsuit saying that Pueblo cannot actually ban those programs because they are specifically allowed by state law. Helping people get around Montbello is not easy. Denver has tried a couple of things to increase transportation options in a neighborhood that's not particularly well served by transit. Our Angela McCall shows us something that people in Montbello have been asking for: an e-bike library.
Sometimes it's the easiest way to get around town, but the hardest to access.
For a lot of folks who are transit dependent or who don't have their own private vehicle, it becomes really difficult to travel within the community.
Mayra Gonzalez and the Montbello organizing group began thinking about this idea with e-bikes back in 2020 and brainstorming with people in the community.
The term transportation desert definitely applies here, especially when we don't have access to the modes of transportation that other communities have access to.
Mayra says there are fewer transportation options in Montbello versus in other areas. So with 4 years of work and a lot of research, the group is launching the Montbello Moves program.
These are all Gazelle Madeo City 9 bikes. They're all class 1 bikes, and basically what that means is that they don't have a throttle. So here in our settings, we can see that the battery is fully charged and the pedal assist is off. If I were to ride this and need some assistance, I would just press the plus button to do eco mode. If I needed more, tour.
Anyone can rent them out for 3 days, beginning later this month. Loli Sandoval is the first bike librarian hired.
I feel like I also get that opportunity to teach them here or how to use the new bikes for people who hasn't used an electric bike before.
The passion comes from years of riding bikes in this very community.
It's inspired me to work here because I feel like it's more related to the community, and I want to help the community more because since the beginning I was very interested to helping out, like to make Montbello a better place.
She'll spread that same passion to others.
I don't know how to explain it. I'm just happy to help other people like use their bikes and like ride around the neighborhood and things like that.
There are currently 10 bikes available. They plan to add at least 2 more cargo bikes in the very near future so people can go to the grocery store, for example, or run errands with them. Kyle?
So they've gone after a couple of things that are essentially just like shared transit options in the community.
Yeah, another option here is for community groups, nonprofits. They can rent out. You might have seen a van in some of that video and some of that story that we just shared. But actually, those community groups can rent out a van if they get kind of go through the process, get approval to do so, and they can rent it for 24 hours. It is also wheelchair friendly.
All of this a lot more economical than building out transit in a community. Angela McCall, thank you. Boulder is flipping the switch to all electric for new construction. And he was a young soldier when he landed in Normandy shortly after D-Day. Now, a day ahead of his 100th birthday, he reflects on his role in changing the world. A man who killed 3 people is going to get a lighter sentence, and it is the first of what could be a number of sentences changed because of suspect DNA analysis done by a former star at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. An internal report found that Missy Woods manipulated data in hundreds of cases, including a case out of Boulder. In that one, Garrett Coughlin was initially sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The conviction was overturned because of juror misconduct, and he got a new trial. Then prosecutors learned about the CBI's Woods deleting data. Citing that investigation into Woods, prosecutors and defense attorneys entered a plea agreement today to change the sentence from life to 42 years. Family members of victims in the case said the defendant is getting off easy because of incompetence at CBI. The city of Boulder is about to require most new construction to be all electric. Only a handful of cities in Colorado have made that switch. If Boulder City Council approves updates to the city's energy code tonight, all new residential construction projects will have to be fully electric. Most commercial construction would have to follow the same rules, except in cases where reliable electric commercial or industrial grade stuff is not available. Nothing in this updated code would require people in Boulder to switch existing gas appliances over to electric. This has moved through council with strong support despite concerns over increased construction costs and worries about whether Xcel's infrastructure is ready for increased electric use. If City Council gives final approval tonight, changes take effect in December. Make Boulder the third municipality in Colorado to make this switch to all-electric construction, following Lafayette and Crested Butte. Kathy Sabin's here with a look ahead after another warm day.
We thought we'd get to 90 out at DIA, Kyle, but so far 89 at the official observation site. But downtown where people live, we did make it to 90. It is warm, dry, and calm out there. Less wind along the foothills and the rapid snowmelt not creating issues in terms of a lot of fast running water today. We do have that early summer heat with us tonight and again tomorrow. Isolated storms for Friday, but cooler weather with a better chance of rain from scattered storms both Saturday and Sunday. Temperatures today way above average. The average is 80 out across the western slope. Temperatures near 100. We'll see those triple-digit highs tomorrow. Light winds out of the east and southeast this evening. Tiny bit of moisture coming into Colorado from the south. The whole high-pressure ridge will begin to migrate off to the east. That will allow in for more moisture and allow us to track a couple of storms. Severe threat is south and east of our state for tonight. Tomorrow creeps into eastern Colorado just a little bit. We'll be watching Yuma, Burlington, and Lamar for the chance for a little bit of hail and damaging wind late in the day. We have a mostly sunny start to the day tomorrow. Clouds increasing and then a couple of storms around 3:30. Another round of a couple of weak storms around 7:30. Those storms really fire up and become powerful in Nebraska and Kansas. We're in the upper 80s. We'll stay there until late tonight and temperatures will slide into the 70s. 94, the warmest day of the week tomorrow with an isolated storm and then a cooling trend for the weekend with scattered storms and a good chance of beneficial rain. Highs in the 70s next Sunday and Monday.
All in all, we were all convinced that we were doing what needed to be done.
He helped break the Nazi hold on Europe, and he says he'd do it again a day ahead of his 100th birthday. And we look back at how Coloradans learned of D-Day and how they reacted. It was a Tuesday afternoon in Colorado, 1 p.m., when word arrived that the invasion had begun on the beaches of Normandy. Now, Americans had already taken to calling it D-Day, even before the date was known. The world knew that invasion was coming. Spycraft and strategy had kept the Germans from knowing the exact time and the exact place, but Coloradans had been placing their bets in a contest sponsored by Craig Frederick Chevy in Golden. Guess the date and hour of the European invasion, their ad said, the most important day in the world's history. It was Mrs. Emma Tate of Ford Street who won the Chevy dealers contest. It was Mrs. Grazier, whose son was in the service, who spread the news of the invasion by ringing the old golden fire alarm bell. Rang it with all her mother love, the paper said. The fire chief wouldn't let him sound the new fire siren, only for emergencies, he said. In Denver, the mayor blasted the air raid sirens to let the city know the invasion had started. He promised he'd do that day or night. Businesses closed in Ray as the community there gathered to pray. As church bells rang out the news across the state, Coloradans had been listening for weeks to be told by the tolling of those bells. In fact, Uzoa Bible Church in Steamboat had warned people not to be fooled into thinking that D-Day had arrived because they'd be ringing the morning bell to call kids to vacation Bible school. The night of D-Day, Coloradans gathered in prayer, from the Congregationalist Church in Craig to the synagogue on East 16th in Denver. There was no celebration because there was no victory. But the invasion had begun. It's a 19-year-old named John Ingergan who came ashore in Normandy a few weeks after D-Day as the invasion was pushing inland. He was injured twice in the year of combat that followed in France. Now 99 years old, Ingergan shares why he and so many others did not hesitate to answer the call.
We were going to put ashore as many men on shore as they had on the ground. My name is John Ingergan, and I was a rifleman in World War II. When we got to Normandy, we arrived on D+7, and in the 12th of June. And there was no one firing on us at the time, so we got ashore with no actual opposition. There was opposition a little later in the day, but for the first 2 hours we had it to ourselves. This is the Purple Heart for being wounded twice, actually. We were there to win the war, to beat the Germans. We were all on the same page, going the same direction, fighting the same war against people who were deadly dangerous people. Beating Hitler was absolutely essential. His ideas were so corrupt that we couldn't possibly support them, and we had to win. That was the most important thing in the world, because they had done the most terrible thing you could do to people: freedom. Freedom is the most important thing. To be under someone else's control easily and for no reason is not freedom.
John Ingergan turns 100 years old tomorrow, well aware that he has the thanks of a grateful, free world. We will return with your feedback next. Final note before we go tonight. So some of you know that I'm originally from Western New York, outside Rochester specifically. I've heard from a number of you who have lived there at one point or another, and you write in about it. And listen, if you've been there in Rochester for a while, you know the name, Don Alhart. And he's one of the reasons that I'm here talking with you. Don Alhart retired tonight after a Guinness World Record career of 58 years at Channel 13 in Rochester, New York. 58 years. He is the example of how a journalist can love a community with their whole heart and dedicate their life to making it a better place. As a journalist and as a citizen, he always remembered he was both. I know that most of you do not know Don Alhart, but each night you watch a journalist who is a product of his example and his mentorship. And so for that fact, and for those of you who have ever lived in Rochester, New York, I wanted you to know that Don Alhart has called it a career. His legacy includes a lot of journalists all across America who are trying to measure up to his standard. Feedback tonight from Mike. This is about Evan's story of flooding at 38th and I-25, where the city says it would be too expensive to retrofit it. They're going to put in sensors and signs. Mike said, what about an automatic pump for the flooding? He says it can be done. When it floods, the pump comes on. Not rocket science. Not rocket science, Mike, but definitely not cheap either. The only place in town that I am absolutely certain we have that is the new lowered section of I-70 through the north side of Denver. They installed those pumps. They had to, because there was no other way to keep that lowered portion safe. We'll see you next time.